Sarah Chun made her decision in a split second. Instead of trying to tackle Kozlova directly, she threw herself sideways behind a large chimney while simultaneously shouting into her radio, "Emergency alert! Prince William's hospital visit must be stopped immediately. Bomb threat at the children's hospital." Kozlova spun toward the sound, her finger hovering over the detonator button. "Too late, Detective Inspector. Even if they stop the motorcade, I can still eliminate everyone in the hospital." "Not if I stop you first," Sarah replied, using the chimney as cover while she coordinated with the response teams below. Her radio crackled with urgent responses from multiple units. "Motorcade has been halted 2 blocks from hospital," came one voice. "Bomb disposal teams are being redirected to the hospital location," came another. Sarah could see the frustration on Kozlova's face as her carefully planned operation began falling apart. But the spy was far from defeated. She pulled out a second device, this one clearly a communication radio. "Alpha Team, execute backup protocol immediately," Kozlova spoke into the radio. "All targets are to be eliminated regardless of location changes." Sarah felt a chill of realization. Kozlova wasn't working alone. There were other operatives positioned throughout London, ready to carry out attacks on multiple targets if the primary mission failed. "How many of you are there?" Sarah called out, trying to gather intelligence while keeping Kozlova talking. "Enough to ensure success," Kozlova replied. "Did you really think this operation depended on just one person? We've been planning this for over a year, with contingencies for every possible scenario." Sarah's radio buzzed with increasingly urgent reports. Security teams at various royal residences were reporting suspicious activities. Someone had attempted to breach the security at Clarence House. Unusual vehicles had been spotted near Kensington Palace. The conspiracy was much larger than anyone had imagined. "Detective Inspector," came Hayes' voice over the radio. "We're tracking at least 6 potential threats across London. This is a coordinated attack on multiple royal family members." Sarah realized that stopping Kozlova alone wouldn't be enough to end the threat. The spy was just one part of a much larger operation designed to eliminate several members of the royal family simultaneously. "Call off your teams," Sarah said to Kozlova. "You've already failed. The surprise is gone, and security forces are responding to all your positions." Kozlova laughed bitterly. "You think we didn't plan for detection? Each team is prepared to complete their mission even if captured or killed. We're professionals, Detective Inspector, not amateurs who retreat at the first sign of trouble." Sarah understood that she was dealing with something far more dangerous than a simple assassination plot. This was a sophisticated military-style operation carried out by experienced operatives who were prepared to sacrifice themselves to achieve their goals. Her phone rang with a direct call from her supervisor at Scotland Yard. "Detective Inspector, we've identified the source of the conspiracy. It's being funded by a coalition of international business interests who want to destabilize the British government to manipulate upcoming trade negotiations." "How much are we talking about?" Sarah asked, keeping one eye on Kozlova while she spoke. "The total contract is worth over £100 million, with additional payments promised if they can create enough chaos to force early elections." The scale of the financial backing explained how the conspirators had been able to recruit multiple professional assassins and plan such an elaborate operation. Someone was investing enormous resources in changing the political landscape of Britain. "Detective Inspector," Kozlova called out, apparently having overheard part of the conversation. "You're beginning to understand the forces you're dealing with. This isn't about personal revenge or political ideology. It's about power and money on a scale that makes individual lives insignificant." Sarah could see that Kozlova was becoming more agitated as her operation continued to unravel. The spy kept checking her watch and speaking into her radio, trying to coordinate with teams that were increasingly under pressure from law enforcement response. "Bravo team is compromised," came a voice through Kozlova's radio. "Charlie team has been neutralized," came another update. With each report of another team being stopped, Sarah could see Kozlova's confidence beginning to crack. The carefully planned operation was failing, but Sarah knew that desperate people often made dangerous decisions. "It's over, Kozlova," Sarah said, stepping out from behind the chimney with her weapon raised. "Your teams are being arrested, the royal family is safe, and you have nowhere to run." Kozlova turned to face Sarah directly, the detonator still clutched in her hand. Maybe the operation has failed, but I can still send a message that will terrify your government for years to come. Sarah realized that Kozlova was talking about the hospital bomb. Even though Prince William was no longer en route, detonating the device would still kill innocent children and hospital staff. Those children have nothing to do with this, Sarah said, taking a careful step forward. Whatever political point you're trying to make, murdering innocent kids won't achieve it. Won't it? Kozlova replied coldly. Terror is about creating fear, Detective Inspector. It doesn't matter who the victims are, as long as the message is clear. Sarah could see that Kozlova had passed beyond rational thinking into the mindset of someone who was willing to commit any atrocity to avoid failure. The spy was no longer focused on completing her original mission. She was simply trying to cause as much damage as possible. Your employers won't pay you for a failed operation, Sarah said, trying a different approach. If you trigger that bomb without hitting your primary targets, you'll have accomplished nothing they wanted. Kozlova paused, apparently considering this logic. Perhaps you're right about the payment. But some things are worth doing for their own sake. Sarah's radio crackled with an urgent update from the hospital. Bomb disposal team has located the device. It's more sophisticated than we initially thought, but they believe they can disarm it if given enough time. How much time do they need? Sarah asked. At least 20 minutes to safely disarm without risking detonation. Sarah looked at the detonator in Kozlova's hand and realized that the bomb disposal team wouldn't get the time they needed unless she could somehow prevent Kozlova from triggering the device. You know this is the end of your career, Sarah said to Kozlova. Even if you escape today, law enforcement agencies around the world will be hunting you. Your usefulness to your employers is finished. Maybe, Kozlova replied. But I've been paid enough to retire comfortably, and I've completed enough successful operations to earn my reputation. Sarah could see that Kozlova was weighing her options. The spy was clearly a professional who understood the risks and rewards of her chosen career. The question was whether she would choose to cut her losses or go out in a blaze of destruction. What if I could offer you something better than retirement? Sarah said, taking another careful step forward. Kozlova's eyes narrowed with interest. What could you possibly offer that would interest me? Protection. A new identity. Immunity from prosecution in exchange for information about the people who hired you. It was a desperate gambit, but Sarah hoped that Kozlova's professional instincts might override her current emotional state. The spy had survived in a dangerous business by being practical and calculating risks versus rewards. You think I would betray my employers? Kozlova asked. I think you're smart enough to know that they'll try to eliminate you regardless of whether this operation succeeds or fails. You know too much about their methods and identities to be allowed to live. Sarah could see that this logic was having an impact. Kozlova's expression changed as she apparently realized that her employers would indeed view her as a liability once the operation was complete. Even if that's true, what makes you think your government would honor any deal you make? Because the information you have is worth more to us than your punishment. We want the people who hired you, not just the person who carried out their orders. Kozlova was silent for several moments, apparently weighing her options. Sarah could hear the distant sound of helicopters and sirens as law enforcement continued responding to the crisis throughout London. Detective Inspector, came Hayes' voice over the radio. 5 of the 6 attack teams have been neutralized. The 6th team appears to be retreating toward an airport. We think they're planning to escape the country. This news seemed to have a significant impact on Kozlova. Sarah could see the spy's shoulders slump slightly as she realized that her colleagues were abandoning the operation and leaving her to face the consequences alone. They're not coming back for you, Sarah said gently. You're on your own now. Kozlova looked down at the detonator in her hand, then back at Sarah. If I give you this device and surrender, what guarantee do I have that you'll honor any agreement? You'll have to trust me, Sarah replied. But consider your alternatives. You can trigger that bomb and guarantee that you'll spend the rest of your life in prison, assuming you survive the response from law enforcement. Or you can help us stop the people who put you in this position. Sarah could see that Kozlova was wavering. The spy was clearly intelligent enough to understand that her situation had become untenable, but she was struggling with the decision to abandon her mission. The children in the hospital, Sarah said quietly. They're not your enemies. They're just sick kids who need medical care. Whatever grievances you have with the British government, those children don't deserve to die for it. This argument seemed to reach something human in Kozlova that her professional training had tried to suppress. Sarah could see tears forming in the spy's eyes as she looked down at the detonator. "I never wanted to hurt children," Kozlova said softly. "The original plan was supposed to avoid civilian casualties." "Then, help me make sure that's what happens," Sarah said, extending her hand toward the detonator. For a moment, time seemed frozen as Kozlova stared at Sarah's outstretched hand. The fate of dozens of innocent children hung in the balance, along with the future of the British monarchy and the international conspiracy that had brought them to this moment. Finally, Kozlova took a deep breath and placed the detonator in Sarah's hand. "I want full immunity and a new identity in exchange for everything I know about the operation and the people who funded it." Sarah carefully secured the detonator while calling in the surrender to her support teams. "Deal. But I want complete cooperation, including details about any other operations your employers might be planning." As security teams moved in to arrest Kozlova, Sarah reflected on how close they had come to a catastrophe that could have changed the course of British history. The royal family was safe, the children in the hospital were no longer in danger, and they had captured someone who could provide crucial intelligence about the international conspiracy. But Sarah knew that this was just the beginning. The people who had funded this operation were still out there, with the resources and motivation to try again. The investigation that would follow would be long and complex, involving multiple countries and law enforcement agencies. As Kozlova was led away in handcuffs, she turned back to Sarah one last time. "Detective Inspector, the people who hired me won't give up easily. They have too much invested in changing the political structure of Europe to be stopped by one failed operation." Sarah nodded grimly. "Then, we'll have to make sure we're ready for whatever they try next." The immediate crisis was over, but Sarah understood that they had uncovered something much larger than a simple assassination plot. The conspiracy involved powerful international interests with the resources to threaten governments and institutions around the world. As she watched the ambulances leaving the palace grounds with no casualties to transport, Sarah felt a mixture of relief and determination. They had prevented a tragedy today, but the real work of dismantling the conspiracy behind it was just beginning. The shocking scene inside the palace grounds had revealed not just a threat to the royal family, but a window into a shadowy world where money and power could buy almost anything, including the attempted destruction of democratic institutions. Sarah knew that the investigation that followed would test every skill she had learned as a detective, but she was ready for the challenge. Sarah Chun led the security team through the narrow service corridors that wound beneath the main palace floors. These passages had been built centuries ago for servants to move throughout the building without disturbing the royal family. Now they provided the perfect hiding place for someone who knew the palace's secrets. The GPS device in Sarah's hand showed 53 minutes remaining. Whatever Maria Kozlova had planned was approaching quickly, and Sarah could feel the pressure mounting with each passing second. Commander Hayes moved beside her, his radio crackling with updates from search teams throughout the palace. So far, they had found no trace of Kozlova, but Sarah was convinced the spy was still somewhere in the building. These service passages connect to almost every major room in the East Wing, Hayes whispered as they navigated the dimly lit corridors. If she knows about them, she could have been moving around undetected for months. Sarah paused at an intersection where 3 passages met. The walls here were older than the rest, with stone blocks that looked like they dated back to the original palace construction. She noticed something odd about one of the walls, a section that appeared slightly different from the rest. "Has this wall been modified recently?" she asked Hayes. He examined the area carefully, running his hands along the stone blocks. "It looks like some kind of hidden panel. I've never seen this before." Sarah pressed against the different stones, looking for a mechanism that might open the panel. On her third attempt, she found a block that moved slightly when pressed. There was a soft click, and a section of the wall swung inward, revealing a small chamber beyond. Inside the hidden room, Sarah discovered something that made her understand the true scope of Kozlova's operation. The chamber had been converted into a sophisticated surveillance center, with multiple computer screens, recording equipment, and communication devices. Cables ran through holes in the walls, connecting to hidden cameras throughout the palace. She's been watching everything, Sarah said, staring at the bank of monitors that showed live feeds from various palace rooms. Every private conversation, every family moment. She's recorded it all. Hayes examined the equipment in amazement. This must have taken months to install. How did she manage it without anyone noticing? Sarah studied the setup more carefully and found her answer. The equipment had been installed gradually, piece by piece, during what appeared to be routine maintenance work. Kozlova had used her position as an administrative assistant to gain access to areas where repairs were being conducted, allowing her to hide cameras and recording devices in walls and ceilings. "Look at this," Hayes said, pointing to a large computer screen showing what appeared to be a timeline. "She's been recording everything for the past 5 months." The screen displayed hundreds of video files, organized by date and location. Sarah could see recordings from private family dinners, confidential meetings, and personal conversations between royal family members. The invasion of privacy was complete and systematic. But what worried Sarah most was a flashing red icon on one of the screens. When she clicked on it, a program opened showing a countdown timer, the same one as the GPS device, now showing 41 minutes remaining. "It's connected to something," Sarah said, tracing the cables from the computer. "This whole setup is designed to activate automatically." Hayes followed the main cable as it ran along the wall and disappeared through a hole leading to the floors above. "Whatever she's planning, the trigger is upstairs in the main palace." They quickly made their way back through the service passages, emerging near the grand staircase that led to the royal family's private quarters. The palace felt eerily quiet, with most staff and visitors having been evacuated as a precautionary measure. Sarah's radio crackled with an urgent message from one of the search teams. "Detective Inspector, we've found something in the Queen's private study. You need to see this immediately." They rushed to the Queen's study, where Sarah found 2 officers standing guard outside the door. Inside, the room appeared normal except for one detail that made Sarah's heart race. A small device attached to the underside of the Queen's desk, connected by a thin wire to what appeared to be a powerful explosive charge. "Bomb disposal is on the way," one of the officers reported. "But they're saying it's too sophisticated to disarm safely without more time." Sarah examined the device carefully without touching it. The timer showed 34 minutes remaining, and she could see that it was connected to the same network as the surveillance equipment they had found in the hidden chamber. "This isn't just about espionage," Sarah told Hayes. "She's planning an assassination." The realization hit them both like a physical blow. Maria Kozlova hadn't just been spying on the royal family. She had been planning to eliminate key members while making it look like an accident or terrorist attack. Hayes immediately activated the highest level of palace security, calling for additional military support and ordering the complete evacuation of all royal family members to secure locations outside the building. As they coordinated the emergency response, Sarah received another urgent call from her partner at the station. "Detective Inspector, we've identified Kozlova's real employer. She's working for a criminal organization that specializes in political assassinations for hire. They've been contracted to eliminate specific targets in exchange for a payment of £50 million. The scale of the plot was becoming clear. This wasn't the work of a foreign government or terrorist organization. It was a professional assassination contract carried out by experts who specialized in eliminating high-profile targets. "Who hired them?" Sarah asked. "We're still working on that, but preliminary intelligence suggests it might be connected to a recent political dispute involving international trade agreements. Someone with a lot of money wants to send a message to the British government." Sarah understood the implications. If the assassination succeeded, it would not only devastate the royal family, but also create international chaos that could benefit certain political and economic interests. The timer now showed 28 minutes remaining. Even if bomb disposal experts arrived soon, they might not have enough time to safely disarm the device. Sarah knew they had to find Kozlova and force her to disable the bomb herself. "She has to be somewhere nearby," Sarah told Hayes. "She'll want to watch her plan succeed, and she'll need to escape immediately afterward." They studied the palace floor plans again, looking for locations that would give Kozlova a clear view of the Queen's study while providing an easy escape route. Sarah's eyes focused on a section of the roof that included an observation deck used for ceremonial occasions. There, she said, pointing to the roof plan. She can see everything from up there, and she can escape using the service elevator that goes directly to the parking garage. Hayes called for backup teams to surround the building's exits while Sarah headed for the roof access. The narrow stairway led up through several floors of the palace, past rooms filled with priceless artwork and historical artifacts. As she climbed, Sarah could hear the distant sound of helicopters, additional security forces arriving to help with the evacuation. But she knew that even with all the resources being deployed, the success of the mission depended on finding Kozlova in the next 23 minutes. The roof access door was slightly ajar, confirming Sarah's suspicions. She carefully pushed it open and stepped onto the palace roof, a vast expanse of slate and copper that stretched across the historic building. In the distance, near the observation deck, Sarah could see a figure crouched behind a decorative parapet. The person was dressed in maintenance worker coveralls and appeared to be watching the palace grounds through binoculars. Sarah drew her weapon and began moving carefully across the roof, using chimneys and architectural features for cover. As she got closer, she could see that the figure was indeed Maria Kozlova, though she looked very different from the administrative assistant who had worked in the palace for 6 months. Kozlova's transformation was remarkable. Gone were the glasses and conservative hairstyle of Margaret Collins. Instead, Sarah saw a lean, athletic woman with short cropped hair and the alert posture of someone trained in combat operations. Maria Kozlova, Sarah called out when she was about 30 feet away. You're under arrest. Step away from whatever you're doing and put your hands where I can see them. Kozlova turned slowly, a cold smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Detective Inspector Chun, I presume. You're more resourceful than I expected. It's over, Kozlova. We've found your surveillance equipment and the bomb in the Queen's study. Disarm it now, and we can work out a deal. Kozlova laughed, a sound that was both musical and chilling. You think this is about one bomb? Detective Inspector, you understand so little about what's really happening here. Sarah kept her weapon trained on Kozlova while trying to process what she had just heard. What do you mean? The device in the Queen's study is just a distraction, Kozlova explained calmly. While you and your colleagues waste time trying to disarm it, the real operation is happening elsewhere. Sarah felt a chill of understanding. The bomb they had found was meant to draw attention away from Kozlova's actual target. While security forces focused on the Queen's study, she was free to carry out her real mission. Where? Sarah demanded, stepping closer. Where is the real target? Kozlova glanced at her watch, a movement that told Sarah the countdown was still very much in progress. In 18 minutes, Prince William will be arriving at the Children's Hospital for a scheduled charity visit. The bomb there is much more powerful, and the casualties will include dozens of innocent children. Sarah's blood turned to ice. Kozlova had planned something even more heinous than assassinating royal family members. She was going to use children as collateral damage in her attack. Call it off, Sarah said, her voice steady despite the rage building inside her. Whatever they're paying you, it's not worth the lives of those children. The payment isn't just money, Detective Inspector. Some people are willing to pay very high prices to change the course of history. Sarah realized that negotiation wasn't going to work. Kozlova was a professional killer who had already committed to her course of action. The only way to stop the attack was to prevent Kozlova from completing her mission. But, as Sarah prepared to make her move, she noticed something that changed everything. Kozlova was holding a small device in her left hand, a remote detonator that could trigger the hospital bomb immediately. One wrong move, and I pressed this button, Kozlova said, noticing Sarah's attention to the device. At least if I trigger it now, Prince William won't be there yet. The children will still die, but you'll save one royal life. Sarah found herself in an impossible position. Any aggressive action might cause Kozlova to trigger the bomb early, killing innocent children. But doing nothing meant allowing the attack to proceed as planned, with even more victims. What do you want? Sarah asked, trying to buy time while figuring out her options. I want you to understand that this is bigger than just one operation, Kozlova replied. The people who hired me have resources and patience that you can't imagine. If this attack fails, they'll simply try again with different methods. Who are they? Kozlova smiled again. Does it matter? Rich people who want to reshape the world according to their vision. Political leaders who see the British monarchy as an obstacle to their plans. Corporate interests that profit from instability and chaos. Sarah was starting to understand the true scope of what they were facing. This wasn't just a single assassination plot. It was part of a larger conspiracy involving multiple powerful interests working together to undermine British institutions. The sound of approaching helicopters grew louder, and Sarah could see police and military vehicles surrounding the palace grounds. But she knew that all the additional security wouldn't matter if Kozlova succeeded in triggering the hospital bomb. 15 minutes, Kozlova said, checking her watch again. Prince William's motorcade should be approaching the hospital right about now. Sarah made a decision that would either save hundreds of lives or result in immediate tragedy. She had to trust in her training and take the risk that could stop Kozlova before she could complete her mission. The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble corridors of Buckingham Palace as Detective Inspector Sarah Chun walked through the grand entrance. She had been called to investigate what palace officials described as an unusual incident in the East Wing. What she discovered would shake the very foundations of the British monarchy. Sarah had worked for the Metropolitan Police for 15 years, but nothing had prepared her for this assignment. Palace Security Chief Commander Robert Hayes met her at the entrance, his face pale and drawn. He had served the royal family for over 2 decades, and Sarah could see the weight of whatever had happened pressing down on his shoulders. Detective Inspector Chun, Hayes said, extending a firm handshake. Thank you for coming so quickly. This matter requires the utmost discretion. As they walked through the opulent halls, Sarah noticed the unusual silence. Normally, the palace bustled with activity, staff members, security personnel, and various officials going about their daily duties. Today, however, the corridors felt eerily empty. Where is everyone? Sarah asked, her footsteps echoing against the polished floors. We've cleared this section of the palace, Hayes replied, his voice barely above a whisper. Only essential personnel remain, and they've all signed additional confidentiality agreements. They passed portraits of past monarchs, their painted eyes seeming to watch Sarah's every move. The detective had visited the palace twice before on routine security consultations, but never under circumstances like these. She could feel tension in the air, thick and oppressive. Hayes led her up a grand staircase and down a corridor lined with priceless artwork. The incident occurred in Prince Edward's private study, Hayes explained as they approached the door. He discovered it this morning during his usual routine. Sarah pulled out her notebook. Where is Prince Edward now? In secure quarters with his security detail. He's quite shaken by what he found. Hayes opened the door, and Sarah stepped into an elegant study lined with leather-bound books and antique furniture. Everything appeared normal at first glance. Mahogany desk, comfortable reading chairs, oil paintings of countryside scenes. But, as she looked more closely, Sarah noticed something that made her blood run cold. On the massive oak desk sat an ornate silver box, its lid slightly ajar. Inside, partially visible, was what appeared to be a collection of photographs. But these weren't ordinary family pictures. Sarah could see enough to understand why the palace was in crisis mode. Has anyone touched this? She asked, pulling on latex gloves. Only Prince Edward, briefly, when he first discovered it. He immediately called security. Sarah carefully opened the box fully, revealing its contents. Inside were dozens of photographs, documents, and what appeared to be audio recording devices. The photographs showed various members of the royal family in private moments, some innocent, others potentially compromising. But more disturbing were the documents, which appeared to be detailed records of private conversations, personal schedules, and confidential information. This looks like surveillance material, Sarah said, examining the items carefully. Someone has been spying on the royal family for quite some time. Hayes nodded grimly. That's what we feared. The question is who, and for how long this has been going on. Sarah noticed that the photographs were organized chronologically, with dates spanning nearly 2 years. Someone had been conducting systematic surveillance of the royal family's private lives. The level of detail was staggering. Private family dinners, personal conversations, even intimate moments between family members. We need to secure this entire room as a crime scene, Sarah said. And I'll need to interview everyone who has had access to this area recently. As she continued examining the evidence, Sarah discovered something even more troubling. Hidden beneath the photographs was a handwritten letter addressed to a major tabloid newspaper. The letter offered to sell the surveillance materials for a sum that made Sarah's eyes widen. £5 million. Someone was planning to sell this information, she told Hayes, showing him the letter. The commander's face grew even paler. If this had reached the press, Sarah understood the implications. The royal family's privacy had been violated in the most intimate way possible, and someone had been prepared to profit from it. The scandal could have destroyed reputations and seriously damaged the monarchy's standing with the public. She began photographing the evidence systematically, noting the positions of each item. As she worked, Sarah noticed something odd about the placement of the box. It sat directly in the center of the desk, almost as if it had been deliberately positioned to be found easily. Was this box always here? She asked Hayes. No, definitely not. Prince Edward says he's never seen it before. It appeared sometime overnight. This revelation made Sarah pause. Someone had placed the box there deliberately, but why? If the goal was to sell the information to the press, why leave it where it would be discovered by the royal family first? As she pondered this question, Sarah heard footsteps in the corridor outside. Hayes went to check, then returned with a concerned expression. Detective Inspector, we have another problem. Palace security has just discovered something else. Sarah followed Hayes out of the study and down the corridor to another room. This one was smaller, appearing to be a private office used by palace staff. Inside, they found the room in complete disarray, papers scattered everywhere, desk drawers pulled open, and filing cabinets ransacked. When was this discovered? Sarah asked, surveying the chaos. Just now, by the cleaning staff. They came to prepare the room for this afternoon's meeting and found it like this. Sarah began examining the scattered papers, looking for clues about what the intruder might have been seeking. Most appeared to be routine administrative documents, staff schedules, maintenance reports, visitor logs. But, as she dug deeper, she found something significant. Hidden among the papers was a palace employee identification badge. The photo showed a young woman Sarah didn't recognize, with short brown hair and glasses. The name on the badge read, Margaret Collins, Administrative Assistant. Do you know this person? Sarah asked, showing the badge to Hayes. Hayes studied the badge carefully, his brow furrowed in concentration. Margaret Collins. Yes, she started working here about 6 months ago. Came with excellent references from the Home Office. She was assigned to the administrative pool in the East Wing. Where is she now? That's what concerns me, Detective Inspector. She was supposed to be here for her shift this morning, but she never showed up. No one has seen her since yesterday evening. Sarah felt the pieces of the puzzle beginning to form a picture, though it was still far from complete. A palace employee with access to the royal quarters had disappeared the same night that surveillance materials appeared in Prince Edward's study. The timing couldn't be coincidental. I need a complete background check on Margaret Collins, Sarah said. And I want to see her personnel file immediately. Hayes made a quick phone call, and within minutes, a senior administrator arrived with Collins' file. As Sarah reviewed the documents, she noticed several things that raised red flags. Collins' previous employment history showed frequent job changes, and some of the references seemed unusually vague. Has anyone verified these references recently? Sarah asked. We conduct standard background checks, but I'll have them verified again immediately, the administrator replied. As they talked, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message from her partner back at the station. The message was brief, but alarming. Margaret Collins, no record of employment with Home Office. References appear to be fabricated. Sarah showed the message to Hayes, whose face went white. We've had a spy working inside the palace for 6 months, he said quietly. The implications were staggering. If Collins had been operating undercover for half a year, she would have had access to enormous amounts of sensitive information. She could have observed royal family routines, overheard private conversations, and gained access to areas of the palace that most staff never saw. We need to search her quarters immediately, Sarah said. And I want a complete review of her access logs. Everywhere she's been, everything she's touched. Hayes led Sarah to the staff residential area, a modest but comfortable section of the palace where some employees lived during their assignments. Collins' room was small but neat, with few personal belongings. Sarah began searching systematically, looking for any clues about Colin's real identity or motives. In the bottom drawer of Colin's desk, Sarah found a hidden compartment containing items that confirmed her worst suspicions. There were multiple identification documents with different names, sophisticated camera equipment disguised as everyday objects, and, most damning of all, a detailed floor plan of the palace with specific rooms marked in red ink. "She's been planning this for months," Sarah said, studying the floor plan. The marked rooms included not only Prince Edward's study but also the private quarters of several other royal family members. Hayes examined the camera equipment, shaking his head in disbelief. "Some of this technology is military-grade. This isn't the work of a tabloid journalist. This is professional intelligence gathering." As they continued searching, Sarah found something that made her blood run cold. Hidden in a hollowed-out book was a small device she recognized from her training, a GPS tracker with a timer function. The device was set to activate in exactly 2 hours. "We need to evacuate this section of the palace immediately," Sarah said, showing Hayes the device. "And we need to find Margaret Collins before whatever she's planning happens." Hayes immediately activated the palace's emergency protocols. Within minutes, security teams were sweeping the building while staff members were quietly moved to secure areas. The royal family was informed of the situation and relocated to a safe wing of the palace. As the evacuation proceeded, Sarah received another call from her partner. The news was even more disturbing than she had expected. "Margaret Collins is actually Maria Kozlova, a known intelligence operative with connections to several foreign governments," her partner reported. "She's wanted by Interpol for espionage activities in at least 3 countries. Sarah realized they were dealing with something far more serious than a simple privacy invasion. This was an international espionage operation targeting the British royal family, and they were running out of time to stop whatever Kozlova had planned. The GPS device continued counting down, its red digital display showing 1 hour and 37 minutes remaining. Whatever was going to happen, Sarah knew she had to find Kozlova before the timer reached 0. As security teams searched the vast palace complex, Sarah studied the floor plan they had found in Kozlova's room. The marked locations formed a pattern, but she couldn't quite decipher its meaning. Each marked room had significance to different members of the royal family, but what connected them? Then, Sarah noticed something she had missed before. The marked rooms weren't random. They were all located along the same corridor system, connected by a series of service passages that most palace residents didn't even know existed. "She's still in the building," Sarah told Hayes. "And I think I know where she's hiding."